Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the agenda review. We have a very light schedule today, fortunately. Just maybe turn it over to Amy and let her start.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to share with you, in front of you, you have a list of open houses that we'll be hosting soon. Knox County staff and our staff have been working on developing the county's first unified development ordinance, and so we'll have our first round of community open houses later this month on Tuesday, September 23rd, and Thursday, September 25th. We'll hold 2 per evening. All meetings will begin with a brief presentation, have an orientation style presentation at 5:30, and we'll have an open house format from 5:30 to 7:30. We'll also provide interactive stations and opportunity for participants to provide input and ask questions about the process and what to expect. And we'll share all meetings on our Advanced Knox website. We'll also be hosting a virtual meeting on Thursday, September 25th from 12 until 1, and folks can sign up in advance for that. Additional meetings that week will include our stakeholder advisory groups. We'll have a meeting with the chamber membership. We'll have workshops with County Commission, and then we'll have an opportunity for a session just for Planning Commission on September 23rd at 8:30 a.m. here in the City County Building on the 5th floor. So we hope you all will participate, and please be sure to share this information out with your networks. If you have any questions, just let us know. That's all I have. So we'll move on to the first agenda item, which is item number 25 that we'll discuss today.
Okay, so this request was discussed at last month's agenda review as well, but this is a request to go from RN1 single-family residential neighborhood to RN1 single-family residential neighborhood. The hillside protection overlay would be retained. Staff recommendation is to deny the RN2 zoning district because the subject property does not have adequate access to support a rezoning of the site. The hillside protection overlay would be retained. So the primary difference between the RN1 and RN2 districts, is the dimensional standards. So both districts permit the same uses, but the RN2 district allows smaller lot sizes and reduced setbacks. If the subject property were subdivided, the new lots would require shared driveway access to Tillery Road, and the shared driveway would be located very close to the intersection of Ferris Drive from the north, which is a safety concern as the proximity of the shared driveway could conflict with the intersection, particularly for vehicles turning left on Tillery Road from Ferris Drive, making increasing residential intensity here inappropriate. Happy to answer any questions.
Give us a half second. Yeah, we were just covering one of the public comments that showed up on this file was that there was no sign posted, and that's what we were just discussing with Amy to talk about that.
I think we just need to verify the date that the sign was posted.
Okay, that was brought to our attention previously, and we did let the applicant know that they had to replace the sign.
Sometimes these signs come down,
Yeah.
as you all can imagine. But our staff take photos of them when they're posted.
Yeah, great.
We'll call PBA. We can't control those ourselves, but we'll call PBA.
Okay, we'll get the lights taken care of or turn it in, but So are there any questions on item number 25? Any questions? Going once, going twice, sold for no questions.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 32.
All right, this is request 9-M25RZ to rezone 3 parcels located on the corner of East Inskip Drive and Shield Road from RN1 Single Family Residential to RN5 General Residential Neighborhood. Since the early 2000s, development in the surrounding area has included a mix of residential, office, and small-scale commercial uses. Residential developments include single-family, two-family, and multifamily. In 2013, the subject property was part of a larger downzoning from R2 General Residential to the R1A Low-Density Residential District, following a resolution from Knoxville City Council requesting that planning review all residential land in the Inskip neighborhood. The resolution was motivated by the findings of the 2011 Inskip Small Area Plan, which found a significant number of areas within the Inskip community where zoning designations and neighborhood character were misaligned. The plan recommended rezoning these properties to a low-density residential zone to preserve neighborhood character and mitigate the encroachment of more intense residential and commercial development in established neighborhoods. Zoning in the area has since remained relatively stable, with gradual increases in intensity consistent with the surrounding area, like minor shifts from RN1 to RN2 and office zoning. The properties shown on the map zoned RN3, RN4, and RN5, general residential neighborhood, were assigned the districts as an equivalent zone with the adoption of the 2020 zoning ordinance. The RN5 district can serve as a functional transition between two-family and single-family neighborhoods in more intensely developed residential or commercial areas. The existing RN5 and RN3 zoning on the east side of Shield Road already provides a transition from the more intensive developments to the north along Highland Drive and the less intense residential development to the west, which consists of a mix of single-family, two-family, and small-scale multifamily dwellings and limited office uses. Further expanding the RN5 district to this location could encroach on the established transitional area. The subject property is designated Mixed-Use Special District NC11 Inskip Small Area Plan in the city's one-year plan and North City Sector Plan. The NC11 district stretches along East Inskip Drive, which was identified in the plan as an area of high priority for pedestrian improvements that could also benefit from traffic calming measures due to the volume of existing multifamily developments in the area and the proximity to Inskip Elementary School. Though East Inskip Drive was repaved earlier this year as part of a citywide street resurfacing project, no pedestrian, infrastructure, traffic calming, or bike lanes have been added to East Inskip Drive since the 2011 plan was adopted. In addition to these findings in the small area plan, the City of Knoxville published the 2015 Bicycle Facilities Plan and the 2020 Sidewalk Study, identifying areas where multimodal infrastructure is critically needed. Both reports noted that East Inskip Drive, which is within the Inskip Elementary School Parental Responsibility Zone, would benefit from these improvements to accommodate ongoing development in this area. The NC11 Special District recommends uses consistent with the medium-density residential land use classification, which permits residential zoning districts RN1 through RN5. But though MDR allows consideration of the RN5 district, the NC11 Special District was intended to support neighborhood conservation and specifically recommends densities of 1 to 12 dwelling units an acre, whereas the RN5 district permits densities for townhome and multifamily developments between 21 to 26 dwelling units an acre. Furthermore, considering the recognized need for roadway improvements along East Inskip Drive, an increase in intensity from RN1 to RN5 is not appropriate at this location. The proposed rezoning does not comply with the General Plan's Development Policy 10.10 to keep transitional zoning patterns intact once they are in place. The RN5 district at this location could disrupt an established transition in residential land use intensity along East Inskip Drive and the more intensely zoned properties and development concentrated east of Shield Road. For these reasons, staff recommendation is to deny the RN5 General Residential Zoning District. Are there any questions?
I guess seeing no questions on item number 32, we will move on to item number 24.
Okay, so this is 8C25RZ. We reviewed this case last month, but since it was postponed to this month, I'll recap key points of the staff report and provide additional clarity on the differences between the property's existing and requested zoning. So this is a request to rezone a 1.43 acre parcel in the Summit Hill area on West Vine Avenue from the downtown Knoxville Grid subdistrict to the downtown Knoxville Boulevard subdistrict. This property is located just west of South Gay Street and adjacent to commercial uses along that corridor. It's also across the street from the historic and active Immaculate Conception Church, founded in 1855. This property is part of a larger DKG district along West Vine and South Gay Street, and there is DKB along the boulevard of West Summit Hill Drive to the south, and DKW, which is the warehouse subdistrict, located to the north. The DKG district is designed for areas characterized by traditional 300-foot by 300-foot grid patterns, whereas the DKB district is intended to accommodate areas characterized by wide planted boulevards with green open landscaping and buildings at variable setbacks. So the West Summit Hill Drive corridor is a good example of where DKB is meant to be located. This area of downtown is particularly active with redevelopment at the moment, including 2 projects that are significant in the context of this rezoning. The first is the Lone Tree Pass mixed-use development being constructed at 255 South Gay Street and shown in green on the aerial map. This project is activating a former surface parking lot with 24,000 square feet of commercial space, 57 condos, and a public corridor through the center of the project that increases pedestrian connectivity between West Summit Hill Drive and West Vine Avenue. This project exemplifies the intent of the DKG zone, which is to maintain a pedestrian orientation and mixed-use environment that is characteristic of the traditional grid pattern of downtown. This project sits catty-corner from the subject property, which is shown in purple on the map, and it will impact the subject property with increased pedestrian activity on West Vine. The other significant development is the 5-story, 89-unit City Summit Apartments under construction at the corner of Cafago Place and Locust Street, highlighted in red on the map. This is on a property that was rezoned from DKG to DKB in 2022, which is the same request before you now. As you can see, this rezoning resulted in a development that is exclusively residential with no mixed-use component open to the public. This location was deemed suitable for DKB in part because it's not surrounded by any commercial development. It's in a predominantly residential area, and it's visible from and has more interaction with the boulevard corridor of West Summit Hill Drive. These 2 projects highlight a key difference between DKG and DKB, which is that the ground floor of a development cannot be solely residential in DKG, but it can be in DKB. Some other distinctions between these 2 zones is that DKG requires building entries every 50 feet, whereas DKB has no frequency requirement on building entries. DKB has a bigger allowance for blank walls, being capped at 35 linear feet versus a maximum of 20 linear feet in DKG. And DKG requires more building transparency overall, though on the first floor it's the same for both districts. In terms of dimensional standards, the DKG zone has a build-to zone of 0 to 5 feet, whereas the DKB has the biggest build-to zone range of up to 25 feet setback from the street lot line. DKB also is the only downtown zone with no minimum build-to percentage. All of these design and dimensional distinctions align with the differing purposes of these zoning districts. DKG is by design more engaging of the public with more entries, more transparency, less blank wall space, and requirements that the building be located closer to the public right-of-way. Staff are recommending denial of this request because rezoning this property to DKB would be inconsistent with the intent of the district and the mixed-use vision for the Grid Street areas of downtown. West Vine Avenue is a single-lane, one-way street. It is not a boulevard, and the zoning code is intentional about this context for DKB. The property is adjacent to an active commercial corridor on South Gay, and changing conditions with the Lone Tree Pass development will draw more pedestrians to West Vine Avenue. The downtown design guidelines, which are used to evaluate downtown development, encourage first-floor uses that draw walk-in traffic and mixed-use buildings with apartments over lower-story commercial uses. The guidelines describe the Boulevard District as being intended for auto-oriented thoroughfares and with medians and street trees, and that's just not the context here. So for these reasons, staff recommend denial, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Amy?
Yeah, Jesse, do you mind sending that presentation to us? And I have a question for Kelsey, which I forgot. On the previous agenda item, I know that there was a postponement. Have they reached out to the community? I noticed that there was no comments on there and that they had said that they were going to reach out to the community prior to our planning meeting.
Item 25, 8-H, 25RZ,
The InSkip.
the InSkip. So they have not mentioned that they had reached out to the community as far as I'm aware of. They may have, but nothing to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't at last meeting, so I'm sorry if this is redundant. This is also probably kind of stupid, and it may be a question for the applicant, but this property, if I'm thinking right, is that parking lot, and you have to go down that big hill. And so I guess my question is like, I'm assuming that we're saying the ground floor would be from the sidewalk on Vine and not like where the basement might be, right? In terms of like what the ground floor would be? Sorry.
That one's not. It doesn't have a battery in it.
How you doing? Peter Aarons, Plans of Food and Building Inspections. It's my understanding the intent of that district is to have a pedestrian-friendly environment where folks walking down the sidewalk aren't looking into somebody's front living room. And so that's how we interpret it in the zoning side, is if you're walking down the sidewalk, it's not residential.
Okay, thank you.
So I've got a question, and this is really for the commissioners, but you're welcome to opine. We've had this request before, as you know. I mean, there was one on State Street, within the last year or two. Now we have one on Vine. And Jesse did a nice job explaining the differences between the DKG and the DKB, which I think mainly the biggest difference is the requirement of some sort of office or commercial on the main level, street level, versus allowing the residential there. There's been, just random thoughts, and I wanted to see how the commissioners felt about even possibly, because, I like the idea of the DKG. However, in different circumstances, not to get into discussion about this one case, but there are different circumstances, different streets, that sometimes it does feel like it makes more sense to allow some residential on the main level, yet is there a way to retain the DKG and allow the residential? So, a thought has been discussed of maybe we could add a use on review or a special use to DKG, that it's still the main zoning part requires that there is commercial or office on the main level. However, if you come through a special use, then we could consider allowing residential on the main level. It's just a thought, and I wanted to get some input from you guys on that. Instead of changing the whole base zone, because that's what we're getting. We're getting a bunch of requests to go from DKG to DKB, and maybe it's appropriate, maybe it isn't, but just wanted to get anybody's thoughts on potentially adding a special use to DKG.
I'll bite. I'm in favor of flexibility, so if that is something that we can do and allow it to be special use, it's no secret that I am not a fan of changing base zoning in the city just because of the wide open, what is left wide open without being able to condition zoning. So I think that's appropriate. I guess when we're having that conversation, maybe I'm misinterpreting what the difference between the boulevard and the G is. But isn't that the entirety of the difference, right? Like the whole point of the DKG is to have the office and commercial on the first level. So if we're allowing a special use to just override that, I guess I'm not functionally seeing why we wouldn't just change the base zoning. Is that the idea is that somebody else comes in later that they're gonna have to go through a special use as well?
Well, I think.
Riddle me why we're,
I think it's still, because, I mean, there may be an area that is not, ready for commercial today, but it might be in 10 years or 20 years too. It gives them the flexibility to potentially leave it in that base zone that allows the commercial there, but you have a special use, you work that, and then maybe 10 or 20 years down the road, you're
Yeah.
still in that same base zone, and you can convert
does
at that point.
DKB not allow commercial on the first
That's
floor?
maybe, Jesse.
I mean, that would be the crux, wouldn't it?
It does allow it, DKG prohibits exclusively residential on the first floor, whereas DKB, it's permitted.
Yeah, just for discussion, we're not, necessarily going to be changing anything. I just wanted to bring that up for discussion. Karen?
Yeah, I'll bite as well. I think that where we are now with the requests that we're getting represent a different period in downtown's development than where we were 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, I completely understand where a business would struggle if it was not on the very main street, if they were off-street, because there weren't enough people downtown to know that that business even existed. And now we are in a very different paradigm where there are tons of people downtown all the time, and the activation of streets is the issue. So we've got people living there, we've got good residential, we have good commercial, but we have streets that haven't activated. And that's what this DKG, I think, is about. And the DKB is trying to segment that to make sure that there isn't a street that could be activated that is not, because it's got residential on the ground level and people don't feel comfortable living there. But to Peter's, he kind of was acting out how weird it feels to be walking right by someone's window right there in their living room. And having lived on the 100 block during that time and having a living room on the 100 block, I know how that feels. So I think that when you look at DKG, it's trying to prevent that from happening and preventing a residential space that no one really has great success in renting out. It's always kind of in flux, it doesn't feel right. But now that it's residential, no one's really putting commercial there. But DKG says we got to have some mixed-use commercial on this ground level, and that will actually activate the street. When we were having the dialogue about the previous project a year ago, something, I think that was part of the discussion, was that it's just not ready yet. And I think that it is. And it's this zone that is actually helping guide us to say what we need is commercial on that ground level and residential above, that will be successful, and the commercial on that ground level will also be successful, because that's what people are expecting now.
But we got to be careful to not deliberate the actual.
Well, and I'm just talking about
Yeah, I'm with
what
you.
I think those zones were developed for, to try and help us.
Yeah, but I agree with also what you said. I mean, the market has changed in the last 20 years, and I think it's gonna change in the next 20 years. So I mean, there's a balance between market-driven forces and good planning. And as Commissioner Gill had mentioned, I'm a fan of flexibility. I think a special use in that kind of scenario gives us the oversight to say, okay, is it right or is it wrong? I mean, I kind of like the idea personally of just allowing the flexibility. I mean, it can be denied, but there are certain instances you can't, put everything in one box. That's certainly the thing I've learned in my life and career, and certainly being on planning commission, is there's no one size fits all in any of these things. I think you got to drill down in on each individual street. You say, yeah, we think it would be great over here, but let's look at the reality of what's going to be happening there in a special use, which is not on the agenda. Would be a good way to do that. So just throwing it out for some discussion, and we can look at that moving forward. So if there's no more questions on item number 24.
Yeah, I just real quick, I just wanted to mention that, so the only thing that DKG does not allow is residential units on the ground floor that are on the front face of the facade. So like amenity areas and office spaces, and like all those other things that are not residential units in a multifamily structure could be on that ground floor.
Gotcha, like a workout facility or something like
Correct.
that. Yeah, understood. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions on 24, we'll move on to number 15.
So this is a concept and development plan for 259 lots, 132 townhomes, and 127 single-family units on 76 and a half acres. This property is on Maryville Pike, just south of I.C. King Park. So traffic study was done for a project of this size, and the recommendation is to add a southbound left turn lane. And the existing lane will be reconfigured to add this at the boulevard entrance of the property. The internal streets will be public, so they've got a 26-foot width within a 50-foot right-of-way, except for the boulevard entrance, which each way will be 20 feet wide in each direction with an 8-foot median. All the streets will be able to accommodate on-street parking where space is available between driveways. The right-of-way stub out from the adjacent subdivision next door, the Phase 1, it's not being utilized in this project. And then a sidewalk has been provided along Road A for the length of it. But the boulevard is just this till you get to the intersection with Road B. So this site consists of two different zoning districts. You've got the planned residential zone with different densities on it. So most of the property is 70 acres, and it was approved for up to 4 dwelling units an acre in 2002, with the remaining 6.5 acres at the entrance was approved for 2 dwelling units an acre last year. So unlike other base zones, such as the RA zone, the PR zone is approved and it retains its unique zoning boundary, even if it's adjacent to other PR districts. This is because the density was approved with the PR district, and it's determined to be appropriate for that area and not the area next door. So staff is recommending denial of the concept plan and development plan because the proposed density in the PR up to 2 dwelling units an acre portion has a density of 2.46 dwelling units an acre, which is exceeding the maximum density allowed. So this is the 6 acres that's zone PR up to 2 dwelling units an acre, and it's built out at the 2.46 dwelling units an acre. So the county code does not provide a mechanism for transferring densities between the two parcels. So the PR zone with up to 2 dwelling units an acre cannot exceed more than 13 units. And on this property, there's up to 16 units. And some of these are within both zones, so we count them based on which zone you're mostly in. So there's 16 mostly within this district. Additionally, this site is entirely comprised, or almost entirely comprised of site constraints. So it's total 76.5 acres, and 74% falls within the hillside protection area. So the northern portion of the site includes the most significant slopes, between 25 and 40%, and slopes of over 40%. And the southern portion of the property has the FEMA floodway, the 100 and 500-year floodplains. And 76% or 16 acres is being disturbed over the recommended disturbance budget that has been done. So there are a lot of different development guidelines from the Hillside and Ridgetop Protection Plan that would help reduce the amount of land disturbance in the hillside area. So one of the recommendations is to use terrain adaptive architecture, saying that structures should be built into the natural slope to minimize cut and fill, and pad grading should be avoided. So this plan is entirely pad grading, and that's essentially the reason for the reason it's so far above the disturbance budget. So some other guidelines that haven't been utilized are You do front yard setbacks to reduce the front yard setback to limit the overall disturbance on the site, particularly when the rear of the lot is steeply sloped. So they have done the minimum front setback on here. They would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to reduce it any further. But steep slopes are generally considered a hardship for approving variances. The lot orientation should be with the natural grade of the land. This will generally be a lateral orientation with a road running along the contours of the hillside. Additional lot width may be needed to accommodate driveway access. So the roads that run laterally in here, rows B and C generally follow the contours, except where they're intersecting with the main road A, which deviates from the contours and has required significant cut and fill. Tree preservation should be encouraged, particularly along the rear of lots and near ridge tops to screen homes. At least 85% of the trees should be saved within 100 feet of the ridge top. Homes should be clustered on more level land areas of the site, while areas with slopes 25% or greater should be left undisturbed or developed at a low density. So approximately half of the townhomes are located on the flat area, but that flat area is within the floodplains. Other guidelines are tucked under garages to help minimize clearing and grading, or basement garages. Reforestation is also something that's recommended and may be appropriate when there's excessive land disturbance on the site. So we did look into this, and there's approximately 4.5 acres of land disturbed in the HP area that could be reforested that's on common area within the plan. But that would still, the development would remain approximately 11.5 acres over the recommended land disturbance. This is just kind of generally showing that the roads are going between the contours, but kind of the site is just quite constrained. Any questions?
Nick?
Yeah, so back to the original split PR for the densities. We're talking about 3 units, effectively, the difference between what they would have to change. I'm a little surprised that we've made it to a development and concept plan coming before us when we're arguing over 3 units. But you mentioned that the way you were counting those units are which one they primarily over the line. Is that codified that way, or is that just an interpretation?
Just an interpretation.
Just interpretation. Am I going to hear that they disagree with that interpretation on Thursday? Is that the crux of this?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I'd like to speak to that. I don't think that that's what are those the 3 units? I think that works in their favor in terms of including those in the other. Am I incorrect in that?
So is it 3 of the townhouses are permitted or shown in the 2 dwelling unit per acre, and I think 2 of them are in the 4. So basically, the way that we typically look at it is whatever the majority of the house lot, like the buildable part of the lot is located, goes into that zone district. So the first 2 units closest to the amenity feature there, the first 2 townhouses are obviously in the 2. They barely touch the 4 dwelling unit per acre. The next one, it's a little closer to half, but it's predominantly in the 2 dwelling unit per acre. So we'd look at that as being in the 2 dwelling unit per acre side. And then the next 2 are majority into the 4 dwelling unit per acre side. So those 2 flow to the other more intense zones. So that's generally the way we look at it from a simplistic standpoint. There's could be other ways of looking of determining it, but really where the structure is built is where the unit is. And so that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at the entire lot, because you could have a very long, big lot that just happens to stretch into a different zone district completely. But really the unit is what we're concerned about, where that's located.
So just for clarification, the portion that's zoned 2 units an acre you're saying however many townhomes are on there right now, it would slightly exceed 2 units an acre? Is that effectively what's happening?
Yeah, just the total number of units
Right.
in that space, yeah, so they're just exceeding the number of units.
Do you know what that would be? It would be 2.1 or 2.2 or,
I thought you said it was 2.4.
okay, just curious. So the question is the interpretation, I think, so.
No, I think the challenge is that, you know, so we try to, this makes it really challenging with the houses that straddle 2 different zones. But it is, you know, my opinion that there's nothing in the code that allows planning staff to approve a development plan for a density that exceeds what was approved by county commission. And I would say that would apply to this body as well. So that is our challenge with this. It's a challenge with planned residential zones in general, in my opinion.
We're not debating this right now, but that's where my question is leading, and that's probably going to come up on Thursday. So I'm probably going to ask the question again, and having that forceful answer is helpful, because I'm concerned when we have half lots and quarter lots and 3/4 lots about the argument of, well, this one shouldn't count, and if it doesn't count, then all of a sudden we're in the clear and you guys don't have to do anything, and we're put in a position of potentially going against what commission or a court would find in the future. So if there is clarity on where that line is, that would be really helpful to hear.
Very good. Oh, I'm sorry, Amy?
So if they, and I know this is subjective, but if they were to be within the recommended density, do we feel that they would then be in they would then adhere to the hillside and ridgetop protection?
No, they're
Or is that
definitely,
still going to be an issue for them?
they're still exceeding it. Would we have recommended approval? Yes.
Well, the hillsides,
And how did we get here? I mean, was this the density that planning staff recommended? Did we?
It was what they requested and what we recommended and what county commission approved.
I think, the easy answer would be, I think it'd be pretty simple if he went back through and requested a higher zone on this piece of property. I would struggle to say that it would get turned down, you know? Higher than 2 units an acre with everything else being 4 and 5 around it, especially attached to it, but still.
I feel like we always, when we see cases like this, the argument is, oh, well, they're not going to develop that. They won't develop it. That's too much work. That's too expensive. So now they're doing it, and they're pushing for higher density. So, what comes first, right? Are they developing it in more density because they need that in order to make this project feasible because it's such a restrictive lot? I don't know.
You have to ask the applicant.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those will be great questions to ask the applicant when he comes in. We have 3 more questions over here.
Mine's simple. Remind me, you mentioned that these were zoned at different times for different densities. Was this less than, or the 2, that was in 2002?
The 2 was done last year.
So the lower density was done the most recent?
Yes.
And did they request higher than 2 and they got 2 through commission, or they just requested 2 on that lot?
They requested to.
It does seem like this would have been resolved before it came to us. Like, we're not going to have clarity. If it's a discrepancy between these 3 properties, and we've got the approval from commission, like, I hear everybody's questions, so I'm looking to you, like, why is it coming to us when that is a discrepancy? It's not that it's, yeah, it seems like it's just, it's not allowed, but we're being asked to vote up or down on something.
I think, yeah, that's my question too, because and I guess, Nick, you were kind of alluding to that, is they put it on here, they must think there's a justification.
Well, that's my concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my concern, is that there's going to be some argument made to say, you all need to take the step of saying, oh, yes, this is okay, even though it's pretty clear that we're not given the authority to say you're allowed to have more density than county commission approved. So if they have more density than county commission approved, I would have imagined that this wouldn't been allowed to come before us if it is out of compliance with zoning requirements, but I don't understand that. I think that's where we're kind of asking, is there any flexibility in this? And if there's not, obviously we know what the answer is, but then why is it?
Do we know if you blended the whole thing, what would the overall density be? Have you guys calculated that?
Yeah, the overall is 3.5.
3.5 total if everything was done? Okay, thank you.
So I think that'll be what the applicant, this is questions for the applicant. So I think what the applicant will say is, this has been done in the past. We've blended densities across different zoning districts in the past. I have not found anything in our codes that allow you to do that. I think there are some examples where blended densities have happened. If you have a development of 5 next to one that's 5, but even then, there's no true transfer of density policy that's ever been adopted by the county. Now, the state law allows you to do that. We just haven't done it. And that's something that we should definitely explore during the UDO. But I think that's the argument they're going to bring forward, is that we should be able to do this because this is unified development. And one more thing, and to your question about why should this even come to you all. So folks are allowed to submit a plan to us, and we don't, it takes a while for staff to get through it and to review it and calculate the densities, and there's a lot of back and forth. A lot of these comments have already been shared with the applicant, but it is within their right. There's nothing in the code that says at planning staff, you have the authority to prevent this from going forward to the planning commission for X, Y, Z.
Thank you.
Interesting questions. Okay, so yeah, we'll deliberate that on Thursday. But does anybody else have any other questions about any of them? Great. You want to talk about it now or on Thursday? Okay.
At all.
Yeah. Okay, well, great. Well, again, this is a short agenda this month, so happy for that. And if anybody has anything else, we'll adjourn. Thank you.